I'm David, and we appreciate you being here. Would you make sure that you like us, subscribe to our channel, hit that alert bell, and leave us a comment on our videos. And if you have any questions about anything, please let us know. Hello, and welcome to Chapter 2 of Lies My Doctor Told Me. Medical Myths That Can Harm You by Dr. Ken Berry. So we're in Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called So What's Going On Here? The quote for Chapter 2 is, "Life is short, the craft is long to learn." So think about that. It takes us a long time to learn the craft of life. All right, so let's dig into Chapter 2. Chapter 2, he's going to start digging into his motivation for why he wrote the book, why he changed his perspective on the medical. He talks about how in his early days, he was part of the problem, not part of the solution. That he once was a healthy doctor, but yet over time he got overweight and out of shape and unhealthy. And he had to come to the realization that was hurting him physically. Pre-diabetes was coming on for him. And so he realized that it was a bad diet that was leading him down a bad road. So he wanted to start doing his own research versus relying on the little bit of knowledge that he learned in medical school about diet and nutrition. That was the emphasis of his awakening period. He came to understand one of the most important things that he have to do for our own health is to understand where this research knowledge has come from. A lot of it's come from big companies, food additives. So we're not getting a true story about food, health, and nutrition. We're just not. He goes on to say, here's the thinking that sold me on primal as the best possible way for humans to eat and live. And primal kind of refers to the way our ancestors ate and lived. And I think there's a lot of good rationale and reasoning for people understanding, hey, there's something wrong with how we're doing things in modern times. One of the tips is we have to trust our DNA, our heritage. We got here somehow as humans, right? So it wasn't but for the last 50, 60, 70 years that we've had such of an epidemic in obesity and health issues and all kinds of other outlying situations with the food and food industry. So he goes back and starts to study how primitive people ate. And maybe that's what we should be eating based on how our DNA reacts. One thing I like is when he's referencing our doctors and the nutritional fields and stuff is when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a hammer. And that's kind of what the medical field is. That's what the doctors have been taught. They've been given one tool. Cut out this, exercise, diet, exercise, cut out carbs. They know one thing and one thing to preach. They don't know anything else. And he kind of talks about and expands about why that is. So, and part of the biggest problem when it comes to this one hammer, one tool, everything's a nail, philosophy is it's very harmful to you as the patient. Doctors don't want to think outside the box. So you got to ask yourself, why is this thinking harmful? Well, simply put, thinking that everything's a nail when you're a hammer is, what about the collateral damage? What about everything else that happens? The tool that the doctors have easily access to are the nutritional facts that they learn in medical school and his prescription pad. He's too busy to learn about other tools than he could use to help his patients. Therefore, the patient gets the benefit of only the tools his doctor knows about and chooses to use. I think that's very important. We have to understand our doctor only can help us with the tool that he knows. And of course, we have to remember, our doctors are only going to use tools that they're comfortable with. That's easy for them. That maybe brings in the most revenue to their clinic and or company, right? Because you got to remember, medicine's a business. Learning new tools is very time consuming for doctors and medical professionals, and they just don't usually have the time to do it. and they're fixed in their ways. I've seen this. I've had experience with my medical staff over the years, and I have a lot of medical health issues. That's why I'm really interested in this book. And of course, you got to remember, money is time. And from a medical profession, it's very true. The more time they spend not making money in clinic or waiting on patients, serving patients, is money they're not making. They're not making money to do research and to do their own studies. When your income depends on believing a certain thing, you tend to believe it. And I believe in that. So doctors make their money because of the tool they've been taught, the tool that they're used to. One thing I think is great that he talks about is association seems to imply causation. In the medical world, this is one of the big lies, the big myths. Association seems to imply causation, meaning if one thing is associated with it, that must be the causation. And he's going to give you an example. Example is when a parent brings a sick child with a runny nose and a cough to the doctor. The doctor prescribes a child a course of antibiotics, and in a few days later, the child is feeling better. It appears to the parent that the antibiotics cured the child's illness. In fact, the viral infection causing the illness would have improved in the same amount of time without the antibiotics, because antibiotics don't treat viral infections. And I think as a patient, we need to understand just that, causation and association. We need to understand that they're not one and the same, that they're not partners. I would love it if every person on the planet understood this error in thinking, he goes on to say, but I don't expect that to happen. I do expect every doctor in the medical practice to understand this concept completely and never be fooled by it. Another one of our lies and myths is simply, when something sounds true, we often start believing that it is. More than likely, it's not. We've all heard the story about George Washington chopping down the cherry tree. But in fact, that never happened. Sometimes when a lie is repeated and told so often, it becomes fact. And what he goes on to talk about in this section is, here's the real dangerous about this. We have all these medical studies, all these scientific studies, financed by an interested party, food group, government agency that wants to sell a product or an image or deliver a message. Once they're found out to be wrong or incorrect, you never hear them ever going back and saying, whoops, sorry, we were wrong about that. And I'm going to give you a good example of that. One of the most horrible things that we can get into the habit of is thinking, if something is less bad, then it must be good. And here's our example on this topic. If we did a medical study comparing the health effect of smoking unfiltered cigarettes versus smoking filter cigarettes, what do we think we would find? Of course, filter cigarettes, assuming filtered is made from something safe, should cause less disease than unfiltered cigarettes. That's right. Filter cigarettes, less disease than unfiltered. Our assumption, our lie, our myth is that now that makes that a healthy cigarette. And that was actually what was told to us in the 60s and the 70s. Filter cigarettes are better for you guys. In fact, they're much healthier, is what was said. Mindless repetition of these type of lies. Cereal is better than eggs. Eggs are bad for you. Eggs aren't bad for you. It's proven now, even though the researchers won't come back and say, whoops, we were wrong, that it's better to have the protein in the eggs than it is to have the carbs in the cereal. So the mindless repetition of medical lies, the false belief in medical myths, can actually lead us down a very serious path, is what chapter 2 is about. And that we have to just be able to distinguish between what's being manipulated and said and what is really real, and what the research and who it's being funded by. When your doctor mindlessly repeats something he read in a medical journal or something he was taught in medical school 25 years ago, without thinking about you as a unique patient, because we're all individuals and we're all different, he's doing you a great disservice. He should be held accountable for his lack of effort, and we should hold him accountable. Let's go to chapter 3.